Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is lecture number 23rd. The name of the paper is Literary Criticism 1. The book we are studying is on the Sublime, written by Longinus. The topic is that in this lecture we will try to resolve the controversy whether Longinus belonged to the 1st century AD or to the 3rd century AD. Though this controversy has not been resolved completely, but we'll at least talk about this controversy. This lecture is specifically for the students of BS English 5th semester GDC PABI, and it is also for the students of those colleges which are affiliated with Abdul Wali Khan University. There is a controversy about the fact whether Longinus belonged to the 3rd century AD or to the 1st century AD. We also don't know much about the life of Longinus because of this fact that there was a Longinus who lived in the 3rd century AD and there was another who lived in the 1st century AD. So which one of these two was the one who wrote on the Sublime? In the first case, in the 3rd century AD, the queen of Palmyra was the name of a place in Syria. Syria in Urdu is referred to as Sham. And there was a small kingdom in Syria then, and that small kingdom was referred to as Palmyra. The queen of Palmyra was Zenobia, that was her name, and she was a very gifted queen, a very intelligent queen. She was the great admirer of Greek civilization and the Greek people, and she wanted that she should have in her kingdom the great philosophers, the great artists, just like the Hellenic age, which we have studied. So she wanted great artists and philosophers in her kingdom. And for this purpose, she selected a minister. That minister would then do this job, collecting the best artists and philosophers and giving them place in her kingdom. She chose a minister, and the name of that minister was Longinus. He was a very good critic and also a philosopher. This Longinus, who lived in 3rd century AD, was the student of Plotinus. Plotinus himself a critic and a philosopher. Plotinus believed, and this is now very important to remember, that the role of imagination and emotion for the artist, there is two things, imagination and emotion, play an extremely important role in the life of an artist or in the writings of an artist. And Plotinus believed that artist is like a mystic. Just as the mystic does his work, the artist also does his work. The mystic's work is to create ecstasy in you. The word ecstasy means to stand outside the body. And this is a reference to the soul, that the mystic does something which excites your soul so much that due to that effect of the mystic, the soul goes outside the body and it becomes one with the one. And this was referred to as ecstasy, to become one with God. This is what the mystic could do. So Plotinus believed that imagination and emotions, these are the chariots, these are the carts, these are the cars or the aeroplanes in which the writer goes to reality beyond this physical reality. The writer's job is to create an ecstasy in the reader, and due to this ecstasy, he is able to leave this physical world and to become one with the one, that is, the actual reality, meet the actual reality. Therefore, Longinus, as he was influenced by Plotinus, also believed that imagination plays an extremely important role in writing poetry. It is important for the poets too, and only that poetry is sublime which has imagination in it and which is written with the help of imagination. Only that poetry is sublime, according to Longinus, which takes you from this worldly reality to the actual reality, which has the ability to create ecstasy in you, so that your soul goes out of your body and it meets God and it becomes one with Him, which is the ultimate reality. So we are carried off our feet, we fly, our souls fly, and we are transported to the other place, transported to the spiritual place, transported to the place where God is and where we meet Him and become one with Him. So poetry and mysticism, according to Plotinus and also according to Longinus, have common roots. Both have the job of creating ecstasy, of taking you somewhere else, transporting you, both of them, and both of them are responsible for bringing your soul close to the soul of God. For a long time, it was believed that On the Sublime was written by this minister who was friend of Plotinus. This is one view, that On the Sublime was written by this minister of Zenobia who lived in 3rd century AD. And for a long time it was believed that On the Sublime was written by this Longinus who belonged to the 3rd century AD. Then in 20th century some new documents were found, and the scholars believed that Longinus, who belonged to the 3rd century AD and who was the minister of Zenobia, was not the writer of On the Sublime, because uh, in On the Sublime, Longinus gives references to the poets, references to the philosophers who belong to Greece, some Hebrew poets and Latin authors. These references are given in On the Sublime, and these references do not go ahead of the 1st century. If Longinus, who wrote On the Sublime, belonged to the 3rd century AD, if this was the case, then he would of course have given references to the writers who lived between the 1st century and the 3rd centuries. But there is no reference beyond the 1st century AD. Therefore, it was believed that Longinus belonged to the 1st century AD because no references are found beyond the 1st century AD. and therefore that other Longinus, who was the minister of Zenobia, who was this pupil of Plotinus, did not write on the Sublime. So therefore they believed that Longinus belonged to the 1st century AD, and it was this Longinus who wrote on the Sublime. There is a second reason to believe that the Longinus minister was not the writer of On the Sublime, because some manuscripts have been discovered recently, which were written by Longinus of the 3rd century. The style of that writing is very different from the style of On the Sublime, and therefore it is believed that On the Sublime could not have been written by the Longinus who belonged to the 3rd century AD. And it is also believed, but these are gestures, these are just conjectures, and there is no reality in them, or at least we cannot be sure 100% that this is correct. They believe, critics believe, that this Longinus who wrote on the Sublime must have had his own school, as Aristotle had his own school, Plato had his own school, where they would teach poetry and rhetorics, philosophy. So perhaps Longinus also had his own school where he would teach rhetorics, philosophy, and poetry, and all this. However, this controversy is not completely resolved. We cannot be 100% sure whether Longinus belonged to the 1st century AD or to the 3rd century AD. Some believe he belonged to the 3rd century, and some believe even now that he belonged to the 1st century. So that was all about the controversy of Longinus and the one who wrote on the Sublime. इसको उर्दू में सुन लें. टॉपिक हमारा ये है कि ये लॉन्जाइनस, एक लॉन्जाइनस 1st सेंचुरी एडी में रहा है, एक लॉन्जाइनस 3rd सेंचुरी एडी में रहा है. तो ये कौन सा लॉन्जाइनस था जिससे ऑन द सबलाइम लिखा है? 3rd सेंचुरी एडी में जो लॉन्जाइनस रहा, इस ज़माने में शाम के एक इलाके में जिसका नाम पलमेरा था, इलाके का नाम है, एक छोटी सी किंगडम थी और इसकी क्वीन ज़ेनोबिया नाम था उसका. वो ग्रीक राइटर्स की बड़ी एडमायरर्स थी और वो भी चाहती थी कि यूनानियों की तरह उसके यहाँ आर्टिस्ट्स हों, फिलासफर्स हों, उनको इकट्ठा किया जाए और इसके मुल्क में लाया जाए. तो इसके लिए अपना एक मिनिस्टर इसने मुंतखब किया, उसका नाम लॉन्जाइनस था. और ये लॉन्जाइनस प्लोटिनस, एक दूसरा क्रिटिक फिलासफर है, उसका शागिर्द था और इस से मुतासिर था. प्लोटिनस का की फिलासफी ये थी कि इमेजिनेशन और इमोशन एक आर्टिस्ट के लिए बहुत ज़रूरी है, क्योंकि आर्टिस्ट की मिसाल एक मिस्टिक की तरह, एक सूफी की तरह है, जो आपको वजद में लाता है, एक्सटेसी में लाता है, और आप यू बिकम वन विद द वन, जिसको अरबिक में फना कहते हैं, आपको फना फिल्ला करता है. एक आर्टिस्ट और एक मिस्टिक दोनों का यही काम है. इसी इमेजिनेशन और इमोशन के थ्रू, जो कि एक किस्म की गाड़ी है, इसमें बैठकर आपको एक आर्टिस्ट ले जाता है इस फिजिकल वर्ल्ड से स्पिरिचुअल वर्ल्ड में, और आपको एक बनाता है गॉड के साथ. तो लॉन्जाइनस भी यही समझता था, प्लोटिनस से मुतासिर होकर, कि इमेजिनेशन ये बहुत ज़रूरी है पोइट के लिए, پوئٹری کے لیے، کیونکہ پوئٹ کا کام بھی آپ کو ایکسٹیسی دلانا ہے، وجد دلانا ہے، تاکہ آپ بھی فنا فی اللہ ہو جائیں. اور جب تک آپ کو یہ کام کرنا نہیں آتا ایکسٹیسی میں لانا، تو تب تک آپ سبلائم پوئٹری نہیں لکھ سکتے، کیونکہ سبلائم پوئٹری وہ ہے جو آپ کو ایکسٹیسی لائے، آپ کو اڑائے اور ٹرانسپورٹ کرے دوسری دنیا میں. تو یہ دونوں کام، یہ کام پوئٹری کر سکتی ہے اور مسٹیسزم کر سکتی ہے. لہٰذا پوئٹری اور مسٹیسزم کی روٹس ایک ہیں لانجائنس کے مطابق اور پلوٹنس کے مطابق. تو بہت سارے لوگوں نے اس منسٹر کو آن دا سبلائم کا رائٹر سمجھا. پھر 20th سینچری میں کچھ ڈاکیومنٹس ملی جس سے یہ اندازہ کرٹکس اور سکالرز نے کیا کہ جو منسٹر لانجائنس تھا، جو کہ 3rd سینچری میں رہا تھا، وہ رائٹر نہیں ہو سکتا آن دا سبلائم کا، کیونکہ آن دا سبلائم میں جو حوالے ہیں ہیبرو رائٹرز کے، گریک رائٹرز کے اور لیٹن رائٹرز کے، یہ 1st سینچری اے ڈی تک ہیں. 1st سینچری اے ڈی کے بعد ریفرنسز نہیں ہیں. اگر یہ منسٹر لانجائنس نے آن دا سبلائم لکھا ہوتا تو 1st سینچری کے بعد بھی 3rd سینچری تک، کیونکہ وہ 3rd سینچری سے بلانگ کرتا تھا، وہ ریفرنسز دیتا. تو آن دا سبلائم میں یہ ریفرنسز چونکہ نہیں ہے، تو یہ اصل میں اس لانجائنس نے لکھا ہے جس کا تعلق 1st سینچری اے ڈی کے ساتھ تھا. تو ایک تو ریزن یہ ہے کہ یہ اسکالرز بلیو کرتے ہیں کہ آن دا سبلائم 3rd سینچری والے نے نہیں لکھا. دوسری وجہ یہ بھی ہے کہ یہ جو مینuscripts ملے ہیں، کاغذات ملے ہیں 3rd سینچری والے لانجائنس کی، اس کا سٹائل بہت ڈیفرنٹ ہے آن دا سبلائم کے سٹائل سے. تو اگر اس نے لکھا ہوتا آن دا سبلائم تو خواہ دونوں کا سٹائل ایک طرح کا ہوتا، تو یہ اس وجہ سے اس نے شاید نہیں لکھا. لیکن بات شاید کی ہے، یقینی بات اب بھی نہیں ہے، اور ہمیں پتہ نہیں ہے کہ آیا یہ 3rd سینچری والا لانجائنس تھا یا یہ 1st سینچری والا لانجائنس تھا. ہو سکتا ہے لانجائنس کا اپنا سکول بھی ہو، ارسطاٹل کا جس طرح تھا، پلیٹو کا تھا، تو لانجائنس کا بھی اپنا سکول ہوتا ہوگا جو اس میں پڑھاتا ہوگا ریٹرکس کو، پوئٹری کو اور مختلف کو. تو یہ ایک کنٹروورسی بہرحال برقرار ہے کہ آیا اس کا تعلق 1st سینچری اے ڈی کے ساتھ تھا یا 3rd سینچری اے ڈی کے ساتھ تھا. کیونکہ یہ جو 3rd سینچری کا کانسیپٹ ہے پلوٹنس کا، اس کا ذکر یعنی یہ کانسیپٹ کم از کم آن دا سبلائم میں موجود ہے. تو یہ پھر یہ کلو ہوگا کہ یہ 3rd سینچری سے بلانگ کرتا تھا، لیکن یہ معلوم نہیں ہے. بٹ اینی ہاؤ یہ ہمیں پتہ نہیں ہے کہ یہ 1st سینچری سے تھا یا 3rd سینچری سے تھا، اور اس کی لائف کا تو اس کے علاوہ ہمیں بالکل بھی کچھ پتہ نہیں ہے کہ یہ شخص کون تھا. So that's all for now. Thank you and good luck.